Good evening and welcome to the final Roscoe lecture of 2025. I'm Professor Mark Power, the Vice-Chancellor and Chief Executive here at Liverpool John Moores University, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the special event this evening. This is a particular highlight of our Roscoe series when we invite the outgoing Lord Lieutenant to look back on their term of office, and I'm delighted that we're joined by so many friends and colleagues to hear directly from Mark Blundell as he prepares to retire as the Lord Lieutenant of Merseyside. Mark has been a remarkable presence as our Lord Lieutenant and a true friend and supporter of Liverpool John Moores University. And we see this as our event, as our opportunity to thank you and to pay tribute for your years of service. I'm also pleased that our host for this evening is John Flamson, Deputy Lieutenant and a Fellow of our university, who's going to guide us through the interactive section of the lecture when we'll be able to pose questions directly to the Lord Lieutenant. So I'd encourage you now to think about those difficult questions. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and I now invite Mark Blundell to present what I'm sure will be a fascinating insight as he describes working for the Royals. Thank you, Mark.
Well, I'm going to start by thanking you all very much for coming. It's really a thrill to have so many people coming to listen to me. It's really it's very good for my ego. Yeah. Can you hear me at the back? Yes. You can. Good. I was assured you could, but it doesn't. Yeah, we've got wires here. It's really a great honour to be asked to give a Roscoe lecture. It's a series of amazing lectures that have been over the years, and I'm very proud to have been asked to deliver this one. In 2017, I was proud to be appointed Her Majesty's Lord Lieutenant of Merseyside. This is a role that has existed only since the creation of the County of Merseyside in 1974. It was our 50th anniversary last year, and I am the 6th Lord Lieutenant. And my predecessor is sitting in front of me, and my successor is sitting in front of me. I'm very grateful to John Moores University for giving me this opportunity to reflect publicly on those 8 years. Today, the role of the Lord Lieutenant is largely ceremonial. Our first and foremost duty when representing the monarch is to uphold the dignity of the Crown and seek to promote a good atmosphere and a spirit of cooperation in the nation, especially through the encouragement of voluntary service and benevolent activity. We arrange visits to the county by the King and other members of the royal family and promote royal honours and awards. We act as props to the monarchy and try to follow the example of the King, who follows his mother, the late Queen, in embodying the values of discretion, courtesy, reasonableness, dedication to duty, and service to the country. Today's Lord Lieutenants have no political power, but it was not always thus. The office of Lord Lieutenant emerged 500 years ago under the Tudor monarchs. They were the principal means by which those monarchs sought to impose their will throughout the nation. As the name implies, they were usually chosen from the nobility, who already had influence in their county. The first Lord Lieutenant of Lancashire, which of course included most of what is now Merseyside, was the 4th Earl of Derby, who was appointed by Queen Elizabeth I in 1585. The date is significant. An important duty of the Lord Lieutenant at that time, soon after the Reformation, was to enforce the penal laws against Roman Catholics, who were forbidden to practice their faith and regarded as traitors. This was particularly necessary in Lancashire, where Catholicism remained especially strong. I mention this because my 11 times great-grandfather, Richard Blundell, was a committed Catholic who refused to conform to the English Church. he had reason to fear the Lord Lieutenant. He was accused of hiding Catholic priests, potentially a capital offence. And the Earl of Derby, as Lord Lieutenant, was instructed by Queen Elizabeth's Privy Council to arrest him and his son and a priest who was living with them in Little Crosby. After interrogation by the Earl at Knowsley Hall, they were imprisoned without trial in Lancaster Castle, where Richard died 2 years later. Had there been a trial, there could only have been one outcome. So one suspects that the Lord Lieutenant was showing mercy by not prosecuting further. Fortunately, times have changed for the better. Roman Catholics are no longer regarded as outlaws, and when I visit the 19th Earl of Derby at Knowsley Hall, it is as a friend. A few weeks ago, the King and Queen visited the Vatican, where they prayed with the Pope in the Sistine Chapel, the first time such an event has occurred since the Reformation. The chapel was built and named after Pope Sixtus IV. Ironically, he was one of the most corrupt popes in history, whose reign stimulated the Reformation and ultimately the break with the English Church, and all that followed. King Charles's visit was intended to help heal that breach. It was of a piece with his great interest in faith and religion of all kinds. Since Henry VIII, all English monarchs have held on to the title Defender of the Faith, conferred on him by the Pope, and meaning the Roman Catholic faith. Though through another irony, Henry was, of course, the king who broke with Rome. Our own king has said he wished to be described as Defender of Faiths, plural, and at his coronation, this was in evidence, with participation not only by Christians, but by representatives of the Baha'i, Buddhist, Hindu, Jain, Jewish, Shia and Sunni Muslim, Sikh and Zoroastrian faiths. The King has asked the Lord Lieutenants particularly to do what we can to foster interfaith dialogue. And in Merseyside, we have tried to do this by building relationships with faith groups. I have, of course, been many times to the Anglican Cathedral, representing the King as head of the church, always warmly welcomed by Dean Sue and Canon Miles. As a Catholic, I was in a good position to foster relations with the Metropolitan Cathedral, especially Archbishop Malcolm and Dean Tony. Suzanne and I have welcomed Ukrainian refugees and become friends with their pastor, Father Taras. We have visited the Hindu dance floor in our stockinged feet. I have visited and prayed at a Sikh temple. I attended a most wonderful Epiphany celebration of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahadu Church, with fabulous costumes and ceremony. With the Jewish community, the Lieutenancy has always had excellent relations, and also with Muslims, who have in Liverpool the oldest mosque in the country, founded by the Liverpool lawyer and Islamic convert Abdullah Quilliam in 1896. When the news of the terrible murders in Southport came through last year, I went to visit the mosque in Southport, and I had the pleasure of meeting Imam Ibrahim Hussein. Much credit is due to him and other faith leaders for building relations after those dreadful days. The Southport tragedy brought out the very best in the royals. The King visited almost immediately, followed by the Prince and Princess of Wales. William and Kate then revisited a year later. They comforted the victims and praised the emergency services and others involved in those awful events. Those who met them felt a glow of royal support. The most visible part of my role has been to host visits by the King and other members of the royal family. I believe we had 42 visits during my time. All these required a great deal of organisation and managing the sometimes tricky requirements of the royal households, deftly handled by my staff at the Lieutenancy Office. Royal visits to counties became frequent during the reign of the late Queen Elizabeth, but before that they were quite rare. One of the most important was a visit to Lancashire in 1938 by King George VI, a 4-day affair which included big receptions in Liverpool and in Manchester. The King stayed at Knowsley Hall with the Lord Lieutenant, the 17th Earl of Derby. The visit was meticulously planned, and woe betide the officials if anything went wrong. In those days, the smallest matters of etiquette assumed the greatest importance. The Earl felt the need to telegraph the King's private secretary with the following question: "Are ladies, when presented, as well as gentlemen, to remove their right gloves?" The telegram came back. "Ruling is that men remove right glove, ladies retain both gloves." The late Queen made thousands of visits and loved it when something unusual happened to break the routine. On one occasion, the elderly Marquess of Aberdeen, in a senior moment, in the days before a retirement age for Lord Lieutenants, started to introduce the Queen to the Queen Mother. He then asked the Queen, "And what are you up to these days?" She replied, "Oh, still Queen." On another occasion, which I can personally relate to, the Lord Lieutenant got his sword entangled with a seatbelt. The Queen went on ahead and said to the waiting mayor, "My Lord Lieutenant appears to be having a difficulty getting out of the car, so I had better introduce myself. I am the Queen." Sadly for me, however, the late Queen never visited Merseyside during my time, though my esteemed predecessor, Dame Lorna, knew her well and enjoyed many visits, with a legacy of great goodwill, not to mention a fund of amusing stories. My wife Suzanne and I met the Queen at Buckingham Palace on my being appointed Lord Lieutenant. At the age of 92, she stood there, small in stature, gin and tonic in hand, surrounded by people seeking to speak to her, in constant conversation for about 2 hours. It was astonishing. The first thing she said to me was, "Oh, Merseyside, your Lord Lieutenant tried to drown me." This was, of course, a reference to the famous story of the Liverpool Yellow Duck, which was overloaded and began to sink in the Albert Dock, requiring a hasty evacuation of its royal passengers. Her Majesty went on mischievously to attribute the mishap to an imbalance of weight as between her and the Lord Lieutenant. Perhaps these humorous episodes are less frequent today as royal visits become less formal and the royal family less distinctively different. This is particularly true of the younger generation, especially the Prince and Princess of Wales. They visited Merseyside several times and are always keen to get through the formalities and have proper conversations with the people they meet. I have mentioned their 2 visits to Southport, where they brought comfort to the victims and made a real contribution to the healing process. A similar attitude was in evidence the other day when the Prince visited and offered comfort to injured children from Gaza. I recall my very first day as Lord Lieutenant in 2017, when William came on his own, and we visited, among other places, the newly opened Walton Life Rooms in the old Carnegie Library. William chatted at length with several groups, indeed at such length that he had to be gently prized away by his charming private secretary, Miguel, so that not too much stress was put on the timetable. One woman, happy and excited, said to my wife, Suzanne, "This is the best thing in my life I've ever done." Another said, "You know, I never thought I could do this, talk to Prince William properly. I thought I would freeze, not be able to talk. But I did it. I can't believe this is happening." That they elicit this sort of reaction is surely why we revere the royal family. Last month, the actor Gary Oldman revealed how unexpectedly emotional he felt on being knighted by Prince William at Windsor Castle, describing it as singular, wonderful, and surreal. He had felt momentarily speechless. "It's a big deal," he said, "the journey one's made from a kid in Deptford to, you know." He was describing the momentousness of feeling valued and part of a greater whole. Thousands of citizens meet the royals every year at charity events or ribbon cuttings. Royal garden parties host 30,000 people annually, and hundreds more go to investitures. These encounters are the essence of royal life. The king himself is a master of the skills he needs for his role. He visited Liverpool as Prince of Wales with the ebullient Professor Higgins, President of Ireland, now sadly retired, having made way for a much more political and divisive figure. They came jointly to open the Centre for Irish Studies at the University of Liverpool. Later, the king visited the newly entitled Royal Albert Dock with great crowds who had to be carefully marshalled so that they didn't push each other into the water. The king has a gift for talking to many people at once, gathering them round him. After a lifetime of practice, he is a consummate professional. Later, we went on to a more personal event at the Marie Curie Hospice, where he greeted staff and patients in such a warm and encouraging way, and then made a little unscripted speech. No one who was there will forget that visit. William and Kate are determined to make changes to the way the monarchy is managed, with less formality, less protocol, more personal engagement, more normality. William sees this as essential if the monarchy is to retain the people's affections and support. One is reminded of the famous words of the Italian novelist Giuseppe di Lampedusa: "If we want things to stay as they are, things will have to change." Up to now, change has been very gradual. When King Charles succeeded to the throne, many people expected significant change, but perhaps because of his illness, nothing radical has occurred. William, however, likening the monarch to the king in chess, which can only move one square at a time, said recently, "I think that if you are too intrinsically attached to history, you can't possibly have any flexibility because you worry that the chess pieces move too much and therefore no change will happen. And I like a bit of change." He is against pomp and elaborate outfits, including Lord Lieutenants. We are discouraged from wearing uniform for his visits. He sometimes visits in shirt sleeves or a pullover. On a freezing day in January this year, he visited Toxteth. The wind and the rain were driving. A mooted ride on a bicycle was mercifully cancelled. Not so the football the prince was due to play with the local children. He was inadequately dressed in just a jacket, no warm overcoat that his father might have worn. At the end, teeth chattering, he had to fight his way through unmarshalled crowds to get to his car. Unfailingly polite, he took his leave of me by the car. "Goodbye, Lord Lieutenant. An excellent visit." This is what it's like to be a modern royal. The monarchy is determined to survive and flourish in a changing world. The royals are well aware that they reign by the consent of the people and that their popularity is currently in decline. Historically, they have always taken necessary steps, however ruthless, such as when King George V in 1917 declined to offer asylum to his first cousin, the deposed Tsar of Russia, leaving him and his family at the mercy of the revolutionaries. Shortly afterwards, two other major crowned heads of Germany and Austria were deposed by their peoples. leaving our own royal family in a shaky position. A century later, we see the justified but ruthless treatment of the former Prince Andrew. He was rightly seen as a threat to the monarchy, and appropriate steps were taken. Andrew is, of course, not the only problem the family has had to cope with in recent years. Harry and Meghan came to Birkenhead in 2019, invited by the late Frank Field, on the day that Meghan announced her pregnancy. There was a large crowd in Hamilton Square, some clutching teddy bears and other gifts for the new baby. Meghan, in bright red coat and very high heels, worked the delighted crowd with Harry for nearly an hour, to the consternation of the organisers. Afterwards, in the town hall, she was obviously in discomfort. But she stuck it. She stuck it out for the remainder of the visit, making a nice speech at Tomorrow's Women, a centre for abused women. Soon after this, the balloon went up and they left the country on the back of a decision not to become full-time working royals. Prince Harry retains his titles, but with his wife and family is estranged from his brother and largely from his father too. It's a sad situation with no end in sight, which has added much pressure to the King and Prince William. Let us hope one day for a reconciliation, for Harry, with his charismatic personality and his compassion for armed forces veterans, has much to offer. The other main royals are, of course, Princess Anne and Prince Edward and Princess Sophie. Edward and Sophie are delightful, skilled in their role and down to earth. They came to open the Ken Dodd Happiness Centre in Knotty Ash, to the delight of all, especially Lady Anne Dodd, who's here somewhere. There she is. Yes. Edward then went on officially to open the new Merseyside Police Headquarters in Casnew Street. He talked to hundreds of staff in groups all round the building, and his conversational style and humour won everyone over. The Chief Constable was grinning like a Cheshire cat. She never forgot this visit. It was an example of the very best of traditional royal visits. Modernisers must be careful to retain this sort of grand event, which reaches out to so many people and provides such happy memories. Princess Anne is often described as a trooper, and indeed her commitment and stamina are legendary. No one works harder, and no one understands more the importance of the monarchy and the risks it faces at the present time. Her many visits to Merseyside remain in the memory, far the most of any royal. Just during this year, she visited 5 times. On a recent visit to St Ives in Cornwall, I noticed a plaque on a wall reminding us that the garden in which it was situated was opened by Princess Anne in 1962, when she can only have been 12 years old. And yet last month, 63 years later, she was braving a violent storm in Singapore, celebrating our diplomatic ties. It was her 6th visit to that country. There is no such thing as bad weather, she says, only inappropriate clothing. What a trooper. The most significant year of my term was 2022. During the summer, we all gaily celebrated the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. There was an outpouring of affection for the 96-year-old monarch who, after 70 years, had been on the throne for longer than almost all of us could remember. There were street parties, concerts, festivities, memorialisation through the Queen's Green Canopy programme, managed by the lieutenancies, and John Roberts in particular managed the Queen's Green Canopy programme. Then, as if she felt now free to leave us, the Queen passed away. Suzanne and I were proud to attend the wonderful lying in state in Westminster Hall, with the queue miles long of people waiting patiently to pay their respects. We were then privileged to attend the funeral in Westminster Abbey. It was the end of an era. Of course, royal visits are only one aspect of life as a Lord Lieutenant. I read through my diary recently and was amazed to recall the variety and number of events I've attended, around 2,000 in all. These events tie in with the various aspects of the role of the monarchy in fostering the best in the life of the nation. I'll start with the armed forces. The King is the head of all the armed forces. They are important in their own right, especially in view of the heightened tension in today's world. But they are also at the heart of our communities. As well as the regular forces, there is a supporting and growing army of reservists who are an increasingly vital component of the national defence, bringing vital skills from Civvy Street. At the Lieutenancy, we seek to help the recruitment of reservists and encourage employers to support them. And then there are the cadets. The cadets is an amazing institution, giving opportunities to children and young people they would never otherwise have had, and producing a cadre of people who are far more likely than not to take a broad, positive view of their role in society as they become adults. I am proud to support all these organisations and greatly enjoy visiting the Merseyside Army Cadet Force at their summer camps. The annual ceremony of the Lord Lieutenant's Awards, organised by the team at Orca Training Camp, provides an opportunity to recognise outstanding reservists, cadets, and the adult volunteers who contribute so much. Each year, I appoint one or two outstanding cadets to be Lord Lieutenant's cadets. And two of them are here today. In fact, there are more. There are one or two others. They attend many events with me and are sometimes asked to address the RFCA AGM at Orca about their year, to great and justified applause for addressing a large gathering at such a young age. And we mustn't forget the adult volunteers who make possible not just the cadets, but also the other young people's institutions, Scouts, Guides, and the Boys and Girls Brigades. These volunteers are the lifeblood of our society and make a huge, often unacknowledged contribution to our collective well-being. With changing lifestyles, there is a shortage of such volunteers today. So if you ever have the opportunity to encourage someone to become a volunteer, please take it. Another aspect is the Armed Forces veterans. Each year at war memorials throughout the country, we commemorate Armistice Day. In years past, veterans of 2 world wars attended these events. Now they are a rarity. But these commemorations continue unabated. The event in Liverpool, in St George's Hall, attended by thousands, always takes my breath away. Remembrance Sunday has become a time of national remembrance of the past, in a society searching among its roots for an identity in a troubled world. And there are, of course, modern-day veterans from the wars in the Falklands, Iraq and Afghanistan, many of whom have fallen on hard times through injury or trauma in active service or through personal problems. We have some great institutions in Merseyside, such as Speak House, Tom Harrison House, not to mention the ever-active SAFA, Soldiers and Sailors and Armed Air Force Association, and other military charities. They all deserve all the support we can give. Then there is the charitable and voluntary sector. As Lord Lieutenant, I have had the privilege of presenting the Queen's or King's Award for Voluntary Service to many organisations, and we at the Lieutenancy promote and support these awards. The presentation event takes place on the premises of the charity, and it's always an excuse for a good party. The variety of winning organisations is immense, from those concerned with cancer patients, suicide prevention and hospices, to young people's charities, such as the wonderful Merseyside Adventure Sailing Training Trust, and Scout and Cadet units, not to mention the Liverpool Talking Newspaper for the Blind and Wirral Model Engineering Club. My very first QAVS was to Thatto Heath Rugby Club in St Helens. My uniform was new and shiny. My sword looked glamorous, and I could demonstrate its sharpness. No one had seen a Lord Lieutenant in uniform before. and they were all a touch suspicious of this exotic outsider. But fortunately, the event took place in a bar, and after a good deal of beer had been drunk, it became a great party. I was delighted when one man whispered to me, "I like your style." It's been very helpful to have the Duchy of Lancaster Benevolent Fund available to give small grants to charities and thereby build our links with the charitable sector. The Duchy trustees pay a visit to Merseyside once every 3 years to see how the money is spent. On one such occasion, we visited Toxteth Town Hall, now housing a charity headed by that great monarchist, Denise Barnard, who John knows well. With hoots of laughter, she regaled us with her story about the King, when Prince of Wales, visiting the town hall, when she persuaded him to let her buy him half of bitter in the pub opposite, which he solemnly consumed. The Duchy trustees are a grand bunch, and they include the King's Keeper of the Privy Purse. He loved it. Another very important award is the King's Award for Enterprise, which is highly prized by winners for the prestige and commercial advantage it confers. Categories include innovation, international trade, sustainability, and social inclusion. There are many wonderful companies in Merseyside. Some are household names. Many are unknown to most people. My favourite KAE winner is Isotech, a small private company of 60 employees in nondescript premises in Southport. They make, incredibly, the world's most accurate thermometer. It is sold all over the world to enable other countries to calibrate their own thermometers. I not only presented them with the QAE, but attended a large conference with dozens of trade representatives from all over the world. And all this from the back streets of Southport. I've had the pleasure of working with 8 Lord Mayors of Liverpool and equivalent number of mayors of the other 4 boroughs of Merseyside, and attending civic events such as mayoral installations, civic services and freedom presentations. I have felt thoroughly involved with civic life, and I know at first hand their commitment to our communities. I have admired and support the work of the Liverpool Commonwealth Association. The Commonwealth is another of the King's great interests. He rightly sees it as a way of bringing together the many strands of the diaspora in this country from the countries now independent nations of the former British Empire. Certainly in Liverpool, it has been most valuable in this respect. There has recently been a resurgence of interest, for example, in the role played by people from all over the former empire in the 2 world wars. And the recent television series by David Olusoga reminds us of the great interest in the past in today's multicultural Britain. I have attended dozens of commemorative church services in many churches, especially the Liverpool Parish Church, whose work under the rector of Liverpool I greatly admire, first Crispin Paling and more recently Bill Addy. I've often been to our 2 great contrasting cathedrals with their bishops, deans and clergy. Liverpool life is enriched by their great connection with each other and the people they serve. I have often visited our 3 universities, got to know some of their activities and attended their graduation ceremonies. I have been delighted to attend many events of the Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, including passing out parades of recruits, and even had the honour to open 2 new fire stations, not 1 but 2. I have attended North West Ambulance Service events and awarded the Queen's or King's Ambulance Medal. I have been proud to attend Merseyside Community First Awards, Merseyside Police Community First Awards, and to sponsor one of their awards. How well served we are in this county by all the blue light services, and how much we depend on them. Many people have supported the lieutenancy during my years in office. I have around 45 deputies, 32 of whom have been my own appointments. They come from many different backgrounds, from business, education, charities, the police, armed forces, health service, law, and so forth. They each have something special to offer. What they have in common is a desire to promote the monarchy and its values and the good of society. The DALs help in so many ways, from officiating at Remembrance Day parades, conducting citizenship ceremonies, assessing KAVS, promoting the KAE, representing me at many events, and using their status as DLs to promote the monarchy and its values to many parts of the community. Among them have been my 3 successive Vice Lord Lieutenants. They have represented me at many events, managed committees, and given wise and necessary advice. I am deeply indebted to them all. I have also been wonderfully supported by Sean, Helen, and Lorraine at the Lieutenancy Office. Some DLs have made special contributions. 2 of them created and manage our excellent programme of schools visits. And they're both here, both of them. This year we visited 64 schools. How important it is that school children learn about the monarchy. And it's fun for the DLs too. One DL encouraged the children to write down what they thought about the job of being king. A little boy, who thought this sounded like hard work, immediately responded, "Okay, miss, let's just ring the king right now and tell him. You must have his number on speed dial. It'll save all this writing stuff." Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure reliving with you my experiences as Lord Lieutenant, one of the best roles anyone can have the honour of fulfilling. Thank you for listening. I'm going to finish with just one story, which, if you've heard it before, my apologies, but it's a good story. It's a story of a very special connection the late Queen had with Liverpool, a particular connection. Her dresser for many years was Angela Kelly, who supervised the Queen's wardrobe and made many of her clothes herself. She reputedly became one of the Queen's closest confidants during her declining years. Angela was born in Everton. Her father was a dock worker and her mother a seamstress. I will tell you how she came to be the Queen's dresser. Angela had a career in hospitality, at which she was obviously gifted, because she became housekeeper of the British ambassador in Berlin. The Queen and the Duke paid an official visit. At the end of their stay, they took leave of the members of the staff and presented each with a small gift. Making polite conversation, the Queen asked Angela, "And who are your next guests?" Angela turned bright red and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'm afraid I can't tell you. It is confidential, and I have signed the Official Secrets Act." The Duke intervened with, "Surely you can tell the Queen." But Angela was adamant, and so embarrassed that she tried to return the gift, which naturally was refused. Angela said, "I will remember this visit for the rest of my life." The Queen responded, "So shall I." A few weeks later, Angela received a phone call from Buckingham Palace. When working for the Queen, Angela had many obstacles placed in her way from people with their own vested interests, and those who would not take her seriously because of her accent. One day she asked the Queen if she should take elocution lessons to help her fit in better. The Queen would not hear of it. She said she loved her Scouse accent. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
You can relax, Mark.
Oh, well, can I? I'm not sure.
Well, not too much.
Not so sure about that.
Sitting here, it's a bit like being a steward at a match or Gogglebox or something. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
I remember being on the visit with Mark to Toxteth Town Hall.
Yeah.
The manager there, it was an anniversary, and they had a big cake, and she wanted Mark to unsheath the ceremonial sword, and was about to do it, and then she said, "Oh, I haven't done the health and safety audit." So Most of our visits are usually tinged with some humour. But we're in the university. I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you, and then I will open it up to the floor. Universities were once described as the critics and conscience of society. So in good conscience, there's a question about the popularity of the royal family I need to ask you. Now, you're ahead of the curve, by the way, because tonight on BBC One at 9 o'clock, David Gimbleby's three-part documentary series, What's the Monarchy For? Airs at 9 o'clock. It's also on BBC iPlayer. So he obviously got wind that you were giving a lecture and decided to get in. One of the statistics that they'll pick up on this documentary series, it was in 1983, the British Social Attitude Survey stated that 86% of people felt that it was very or quite important to continue having a monarchy. 40 years later, in 2024, that figure had dropped to 51%. And the approval figure for young people was much lower than that. So I wonder, Mark, what would you say to people to persuade them to be more pro-monarchy?
Well, it's a big question. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons why there's been a reduction, there are a number of fairly obvious reasons why there is a reduction of support, because, first of all, the late Queen's a very popular figure for herself and her own personality. And the fact that when she died, I think a lot of the steam went out of the monarchy's sails. So it was one factor. What would I say to people? I would say to them that the royals do a good job. I could only tell them the things that I've been saying in my speech. That's all. I couldn't say anything more than that. They do a good job for what they do. They turn up to Southport after the riots and the murders, talk to people. They always around to make an immense number of visits, a huge number of visits they make. Princess Anne makes 400 visits a year, something like that. That's all I can say, really. I mean, I would say one thing, which is that I think there's an issue of the royal finances, I think, and I think that a justified issue about the lack of clarity over the royal finances. And I think something will have to be done about that.
Well, in fact, Mark, when people are questioned who are, I'm not saying hostile, but would prefer probably a republic to a constitutional monarchy, one of the things that comes out is the lack of accountability.
Yes.
It's very rarely personal hostility.
Yes.
There is a recognition that people do good public service. But you mentioned the sad passing of the Queen, who was much esteemed.
Yeah.
Since her passing, most commentators would say that the royal family has become smaller, more modern, I suppose if I use that word, more informal. And I'd just like your views on that, but something, I don't know whether any of you saw it, there was a TV programme, what's his name, Eugene Levy, the actor, and Prince William was with him. And there's something that Prince William said, that he wanted to challenge traditions, and I think his exact words were, there are points when you look at tradition and go, is that still fit for purpose today? And further on in the interview, he said, I like to question things.
Yeah.
What's your sense of that? I mean, and would you support a smaller more modern, more informal monarchy?
Some of it, some of what you said. I would not necessarily smaller, because I think that to have the sort of size we have now is probably about right. And Princess Anne was complaining not long ago that there weren't enough royals to meet all the demand. There is tremendous demand from people to make their visits. But as far as more informal, that is happening. It's definitely happening, and I'm sure that's a good thing. Yeah.
And a lot of people, I know that if you're with Merseyside Lieutenancy and you say you are, and you're a deputy lieutenant, they think you're in the military.
Yes.
Now, the Lord Lieutenant is an ancient title.
Yes.
If you were going to choose another name that would resonate with current culture and taste, what would it be?
Well, I don't have a problem with the name Lord Lieutenant, because historically it derives from our links with the military, and we still have very strong links with the military. Admittedly, we do a lot of other things as well, but I don't in any way feel embarrassed by it being a military sort of title, because that's where it came from, and our links are still very strong. If we wanted another title, it would be difficult to think what it could be. I did think of possibly consul, King's Consul, something like that.
Yeah.
King's Consul.
And I think some people
Yeah.
understand that more
Yeah.
significantly.
Yeah.
You did mention that, of course, Lord's Lieutenant in the past would have quite excessive powers, you know.
Yes.
Were there ever times that you were tempted to call out the militia, you know?
Well, the serious answer is,
Yeah.
of course, no.
No. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll
very glad we
I'll
did
come
that.
back to you in a moment. I just wonder whether, I'm conscious of time, so I want to make sure that people can ask any question they want. He's revved up and raring to go. So are there any questions from anybody in the naughty seats at the back? Or the respectable seats in the middle? Think about it. Well, I've got another couple of questions that I'd like to ask. You mentioned in your lecture, Mark, which gave a glimpse of the rich and varied life you've had as Lord Lieutenant. You mentioned the King's interest in interfaith relations. And it's been a major theme of his for some time. Another major theme, of course, is facing up to climate change. I mean, what role do you see for the lieutenancy in promoting the King's interests? Not necessarily those two issues, there may be other issues in your mind, but you know, give us a sense of what the lieutenancy can do in this rich and diverse county of 1.5 million people.
Well, I mentioned the 4 C's. The King has the 4 C's. I'm not sure I can say what they are exactly. One of them is Commonwealth, and I mentioned the links we have with the Liverpool Commonwealth Association. That's one example of what we can do. And then I also mentioned faith, of course, which is an important one for him, an important one for us. What else? What else is there?
Well,
climate change and
yeah.
conservation generally, where we
Yeah.
can't directly.
Yeah.
We do give out awards. There's a Queen's Award for Enterprise category which covers climate, but it's not something that we can directly get involved in.
Do you think a Lord Lieutenant can advocate to the King? You know, for example, I mean, I've said this to colleagues in the lieutenancy. you know, why not a King's Award for tackling climate change, or, you know, something specific? I mean, is it in the gift of the Lord Lieutenant to...
There is an award, the
Yeah.
King's Award for Enterprise,
Yeah.
Sustainability. Sustainability Award.
And,
Yeah.
and if you have got views, does the King listen to them through his intermediaries? I know what the processes would be, but
Yes.
you know, do you feel confident that a Lord Lieutenant could press a case, if I put it that way?
I think it would be difficult, quite honestly. To be honest, it would be difficult. You can say people are expressing their views to the King about everything under the sun all the time. You know.
Yeah. Well, I understand that, and it may be that the Lieutenancy needs to be alert to a lot of those issues when it is promoting the King's Award for Voluntary Service, the King's Award for Enterprise.
Yeah.
You mentioned that an incredible number of visits that you have been on, as well as escorting royals. Just the ones that you have been on locally, you did mention Isotech in Southport.
Yeah.
I was pleased to attend with Sean McAvoy.
Yeah.
It is actually true that they create these chronometers that literally set the time for the world.
Yeah, it's the temperature. Temperature.
Yeah, temperatures, but around the world, the measurement of temperatures actually starts in a back street in Southport, which I thought was quite
extraordinary, isn't it?
Quite extraordinary. But
Yeah.
you mentioned that. Are there any others that spring to mind? You know, whether from the private or the civic side, or indeed the community and voluntary side. Are there any that spring to your mind?
Well, I mentioned Toxteth Town Hall and Denise Barnard.
Yeah.
They are great, those visits. The way she manages to create a multi-ethnic community there, which is so informal and pleasurable, and they have extremely good quiche, very good quiche. One other one I will mention. I mean, I've visited so many charities that I wouldn't want to be pointing out too many, because it would be difficult. I will just mention one, which is one called Fighting to be Heard. Fighting to be Heard is a charity for women with incurable breast cancer. And Suzanne and I went there only just a few weeks ago. We were invited to come. And it was just the most moving occasion. It was at the little theatre, what's it called, the one in Hanover Street. Yes, the Epstein Theatre. The Epstein Theatre it was, and there was a concert, and they had performing bands, and we were expecting something fairly run-of-the-mill, you know. But these singers and performers were absolutely top-notch, really top-notch people, really good. And they were interspersed with stories by the families who were involved with incurable breast cancer. And it's obviously, the whole thing is extremely powerful anyway, and to have it in that setting with these stories and this amazing music, it was just a wonderful occasion, which I shall not forget.
It's quite a privilege, isn't it, to be able to visit so many of these hidden gems. And Peter, you'll have this opportunity as well shortly as the new Lord Lieutenant. You dealt with quite a few royals. Are you at liberty to say who your favourite was? Or would you be sent to the Tower for something like that?
Well, they're all very good.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Can we get that on record, please? He said they're all very good.
The King is extremely good at his job. He really is first class at his job. He might not be, but he is. He's very thoughtful when he talks to people. He even talks to the Lord Lieutenant. which is very nice. Yes.
I'm going to bring this to a close. Before I do, thank you, Mark, for giving us a rich insight into your varied life. But more importantly, thank you for being such a faithful ambassador for this county over many years. We do appreciate it. I'll leave you with the last word, or last words. If there were 3 words that could sum up your reflection, how you have felt, might be a way of putting it, about being Lord Lieutenant, what would they be?
3 words.
You can have one if you want.
It's an honour. It's been an honour and a privilege to do this role. And I have found out more about this county than I think anyone could in any other role, except possibly over the county as a whole, even more than the mayors. They only have their own patches, whereas we have a whole view over the county. And I can't imagine that anybody could.
Well, I think that they're fitting words.
A nicer role than the one I've had.
I think you've said an honour.
And thank you all for your support, and thank you, John, for your support.
Not at all. And this is a tribute to you, Mark. An honour and a privilege.
Thank you.
And we're proud of you. Thank you very much.